welcome everybody. So glad to be back for Teacher Comedian Podcast and with my good friend, Ross Shafer.
Hello, Chris. What do you want?
uh, a lot actually. We can't get into that, but if that would be a 2 hour podcast. But if you do not know Ross, I don't know where you've been for the last 40 years, but he was once the host of The Late Show on Fox back in the 80s and has done lots of hosting of other game shows and things. A best-selling author and now speaks around the country for businesses. So, Ross, thank you for doing this
Well,
and
of
going through
course.
all the technical difficulties it takes to get to this.
I know. Well, these are hard to set up. So I think it'll go well.
It's going to go great because I'm so frustrated. No, I'm great. So I know who you are, and I was excited. I met you at a show not long ago,
Really?
and
I,
immediately knew who you were and knew a lot about your biography, probably a disturbing amount. But tell other people maybe how you got to the part where you got to be a late night. I'm just going to jump right to that point because that to
okay,
me
fine.
is the big.
So I was at that point. I had several jobs. I had flipped businesses and houses, and went to a comedy club. And I thought, geez, I think I could probably do that. And I wrote jokes and went to a Seattle comedy club. Got into a comedy competition where were about 200 people. First year I totally bombed, but the second year I won it. And I went to a coach in San Francisco who said, you got to edit everything you say. Only keep the laughs to get 3 seconds. Link those together, and then you might have an act. And over the course of a year, that's what led me to winning this comedy competition where you do 20 minutes. I started touring with people around the Seattle area as an opener, and then as a middle act. But I keep destroying the middle acts. They couldn't keep up and didn't want to follow me. That led to an agent saying, "I think I can help you," and he did. I started touring with Diana Ross and Dionne Warwick and Eddie Rabbitt and I
Wow.
think other big acts who are probably dead now. But
All of those acts are super funny, so I can see
they're
they,
super funny.
they
So
were
all of a sudden now I find
out of
myself,
all of this. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I have a lot of stories about my road days that way. But at one point, then I got a television show, and it was a brand new show called Almost Live that was on for 17 years. I wasn't there; I was there for 5 years, but it went on to Comedy Central, and I went to Hollywood because I was getting offers to host game shows, and then eventually, when Joan Rivers was fired, I was offered her show, which competed against Carson and Letterman, depending on the time slot that you were in. But for me, it was I think had been doing stand up about 7 years by that point, so I had a pretty good act. Was touring a lot and I just wanted to get more interview experience, and that launched me into doing that. And we won a lot of awards, um, and it was a cool time. But it was canceled within a year. And then I got other shows. Matt Lauer and I hosted with Diana Nyad, who now has a movie about her life on Netflix. And so I did that in New York following Nightline, then came back to do the Match Game. So it just one thing led to another. The more I was on television, the more television shows I was offered. And so at some point, after 5 cancellations in a period of, I don't know, it was about 6 or 7 years, I was back on the road doing stand up. And then I thought, I got to leverage this. I'm traveling all the time. How could I make more money doing my act? And I discovered corporate speaking and corporate entertaining. So that's where I am now. I have done that for 20 years.
Wow. So I'm going to go back.
Want me to talk faster?
No. I think that's the end of the podcast. I think we're done.
There, that's it.
We covered it in 3. No, I would like to go back because where I knew you, of course, was from The Late Show, and this is after Joan Rivers got fired. So this, at that time, obviously, most people know this, but there was Johnny Carson, and then Letterman had come around, but there wasn't really any other late night hosts. There was a few that tried here and there.
Yeah.
And then
Everybody tried.
yeah, I guess. And then Joan Rivers started on Fox because Fox was now becoming a real station or a real
Yeah,
whatever you
they're
call
trying
it.
to be a real network.
And with Simpsons and all that. And that's where, so I watched her a little bit, and that was a huge deal at the time. I know it's hard to kind of put ourselves back in that mindset of
Yeah.
that she had gone from being a guest host in one of Johnny's special guest host and then doing her own thing. But she got fired, and that's what I remember. And then you come along, and there were a bunch of
Oh man.
guest hosts. And how did that come about? Or did you see some of those come along and say to your agent or someone, "Go, I can do this"?
I
Why
I
are they?
was so Chris, I was so frustrated, and every comedian goes through this when they see somebody who's had success and they think, I'm so much better than that. Why? How come it's not happening to me? And at that time I was doing the show almost live, and we were in our fifth season. We went from a half hour to an hour, had all these advertisers, very successful. But I would look at television every night and think, Joan, you should not have your own show. I should have that show. And I was fortunate enough to have an agent in Hollywood at that time at the William Morris Agency, who was a big fan and did a lot of dates together. And he said, I'll submit your video. And I had a highlight film of me interviewing people, me doing monologues, me doing sketches, and they called me and said, we would like you to fly to Hollywood tomorrow. And I had to get out of I had a radio job. I was doing an afternoon radio show 4 hours a day. I had out clauses in my radio contract and my TV contract that if anything big came along, I could take it. So I fly down and I audition on Sunday, and with a fake crew and a fake guest list. And it went really well. And they said, that's great. We'd like you to start tomorrow. I, I couldn't do that. I said, I can't do. Well, no, we need you. We need you to start right away. You got the job. We're negotiating with your agent. I had to make some scrambling phone calls to the NBC affiliate that I was with and KJR Radio, a 50,000 watt station I was on. And they said, I just took a vacation to see if it would work. And it did. And so for the next 5 nights, I came on and did a monologue. I had a few writers, but we were about to go into a writer's strike. So we were scrambling, and a lot of the jokes didn't land. I was doing monologues from my own act for that first week, and I was enjoying myself. I felt very comfortable at it because I
Yeah.
knew how to interview people, and I was comfortable, and I bomb really well, as it turns out. I don't appear to be nervous or shaken if something goes sideways. I had enough wit, I guess, that I could bail it out. So anyway, at the end of that week, I thought, well, that was interesting, and now I've got 5 nights of new videotape, and I go back home, ready to start up my life again. And I'm married and have 2 kids at that time, and I still have 2 kids, by the way, not at that time, but they're still around. And they over the weekend they said, okay, we want to make a deal. We want to sign a contract for you to take this on. I was shocked, and I had a real problem going to my other jobs. And I said, I can come home and do the once a week almost live show on the weekends. No, we can't quite do it that way. Radio people, there are always people who will do a radio show, but I had to make a leap. And for me, it was a leap that I just had been dreaming about this my whole career at that point. Could that ever happen? And so I did. I did it, and then I had a 13-week contract. I had another 13-week contract. They named the show after me at one point, and then we made it 8 months. And at the 8 month time, this is television how it works. Barry Diller was running the network. The producers, we have this big party. I get a Tiffany clock, and everybody on the stage. Oh my God, we're just so happy that we beat Jones ratings, and this is unbelievable. The affiliates are on board, and so the next day I come to work, and they go, "Yeah, we decided to cancel you." When? Today, after today's show. Well, what about my clock? And what about everything you told us in those meetings? Yeah, but we're going to put on a time. We have enough money now. We can put on a primetime show with George C. Scott, and we have The Simpsons are doing well, and so is Married with Children. And I was out, and they ran reruns until I could figure it out. But what a ride, man! It was a
That
great ride.
so do you even? Oh, I have so many questions about that. So at least though, the initially after the first week, and
Yeah,
by the way, that's good. The tape you sent, was it VHS back then? Was it
it
with
was a
Beta?
VHS tape of me insulting Phil Donahue and doing sketches and just clowning. I had did a send up of Larry King where he's my guest, but I'm asking him all these questions, making him think he has to audition for our little show, and it was very funny. It was funny enough, I guess, to get me that job.
Uh, But then, so you do a week, and there had been several, hadn't there
I
been
think there were
several?
30, Chris. There were
Oh,
30 people who wanted that job, including Bob Newhart and Don Rickles and anybody that you can think of who thought they should get their own show because they were paying a lot of money. Fox,
but,
they were trying to launch.
but if Joan had burned this bridge, because this is, a notorious showbiz
Yeah.
story, that then Johnny Carson never talked to her again and never
Nope.
spoke to her again.
Nope.
Wouldn't all of his other friends be burning the same bridge, or would they not be? I mean,
No.
you can't answer for them, but I
Well,
didn't.
that's a great question. But Joan was an official host with a contract,
Oh,
and she was supposed to fill in, and then so NBC was, we're never going to do that again. We're going to get
oh,
two
I
people.
see. I see.
So they got Shandling and Leno.
So
Um,
she had a contract with someone and she broke it, so that's what was the
yes.
problem. And then
Yeah.
you came along and broke all of your contracts,
Yeah. It was.
which
When
was
they ask you to,
all better. No,
I know, but Chris, if Saturday Night Live came to you, you got to.
before you even get to the end.
I know,
Yes.
but okay, but you have a contract too.
Yeah.
You have a lot of people depending on you. But they said, come to New York, we're going to be on Saturday Night Live. How are you going to get out of your contract?
I would say you're going to have to arrest me. You're just going to have to arrest me. Arrest. I mean,
But look at all the young lives you're going to be destroying by doing this.
I think they wouldn't. I don't know that they would miss me for the first 6 months.
Oh,
I
well,
think it's like a cat. They say if you die, your cat will not bother you for a few months and eventually will eat you. I think that's about the same amount of time that would take my students to go, wait a second, wasn't there another guy here?
there's another guy here, and yeah, well, you can see him every Saturday night now.
Yeah. That question, and it'll be on another podcast, not that I'm teasing another podcast, but that
See,
when I first started teaching, my very first teaching job, that was the question I got from the hiring committee was, if you get a sitcom deal
right?
during the first semester, are you going to just quit and leave? Like, kind of a crazy, this is a pretty crazy question to ask someone for a
Well,
teaching job.
but they would ask you because of your background. So
Yeah, but as I say, like, I don't think you understand how they give out sitcoms. They're not coming to Denver and walking through the school going, hey, this guy should be on his sitcom.
that's that's so funny that, and and people who are not entertainers are referred to as civilians,
Yeah.
and which is a horrible term to say.
The other one is normal people or normies. And
Normies. That's right. That's right.
so I don't know,
So
civilians at least sounds respectful.
it does, but because people don't know how show business works, uh, I can't. To this day, people will see me perform and say, "Oh man, you should get another talk show." Like, yeah, I didn't. I should call somebody about that, shouldn't I? They have
Was
no idea how the process works.
was that ever the dream for you, was to do a talk show, or was that not part of your?
I watched the Carson show every night, and I thought this is the most amazing. He works 1 hour a day, and I keep reading about how many millions of dollars he makes. Why don't people apply for that job? And I was so naive as a teenager. And so as I got older, wasn't on my radar because I was interested in business and I played football in college, and so I wasn't really. It seems like an impossible path anyway. When I got into stand-up comedy, that's when it hit me. Carson was a magician. Letterman was a weatherman. What can I do that would make that next step? And stand-up comedy seemed like the thing, but you have to be really good at it to even get noticed or to get an agent who would line you up. So that's why I focused really hard on how to be the best stand-up I could and win as many contests as I could and headline as often as I could. And it just happened to work out that I was seen by Alan Thicke. Had a Canada show before he did Thick of the Night. So I did his show in Canada, which was only across the border from Seattle. And I used that videotape to get an agent. It was just like a little progression that for me, and the uh, guest who was on with me was Michael J. Fox. And he gave me this endorsement. And I don't know, it was just little by little, inch by inch is how those jobs happen.
Yeah.
And it just happened to be that I was doing a show like that when Joan was fired. So it was really serendipitous and lucky, I think.
That's raised a whole bunch of other questions about whether or not that can happen. That you can make it happen, or like you manifest that, or is it just almost predestined that it's going to for some people. I don't know. It's a question that comes up quite a bit because I've toured with some big names, and
Yeah.
people will say, "How come Chris isn't famous or whatever?" And sometimes they say it's either going to happen or it's not. There's almost nothing you can do about it. And
I'm gonna disagree with that, and here's why I'll say that
and
is because
I would like for that to be disagreed with because I
okay.
like to have some hope.
Well, here's why I want to disagree with that. Because I was a driven guy anyway, scrambling, buying businesses, buying houses, buying stuff that I didn't have money to buy. I thought when I got into broadcasting, I thought, oh, man, I'm 29. This is I don't have a lot of time, so I better get as much done as I can. So when the radio job came up, I took it, and I didn't even know how to do radio. They taught me how to do radio. When we were on Almost Live, we did everything we could to attract attention to ourselves and cause trouble in the state of Washington. One of the things was we tried all kinds of publicity stunts, and the one that really caught fire was changing the state song to the rock tune Louie Louie. And we had tried other things like the National Dog of America and Sonny and Cher reunion. We tried all kinds of things, but one caught fire, and it had 286 days of press. So it was, what could we do to get more attention for ourselves? And it all kind of fell to me as the host of the show.
Yes.
So if you can host anything, podcast is a great venue now. Get out there and be outrageous if you can, so that you get on people's radar. And for me, that was what I think got me or sliding into this position. I also auditioned for those people that I opened for by sending them videotapes, sending their managers videotapes. I bombed in front of a big 5 or 6 thousand stadium opening for Three Dog Night and Steppenwolf, and they threw pennies and nickels and food at me. And I thought, I've got to get out of this, but Steppenwolf or the Three Dog Night wasn't set up. They said, stretch, stretch, stretch. I'm just bombing as bad as anybody can. But I did one smart thing. When I look back, it looked like they were ready. And I said to the audience, all right, enough of this. You're going to enjoy Three Dog Night. And there was this giant applause that went up. Like, finally, this knucklehead's going to get off, and the act's showing up. The manager for Three Dog Night, the only thing he heard was this uproarious applause that he thought was my encore. And so I toured with those guys because of that.
Well, but so did you express to people? They say, "Yeah, I'm doing this, but you know what I'd really like to do is have my own talk show." Did you ever say that out loud to people?
What
Maybe
I
other
did say
comics?
it. I did say it out loud. That's that is the what the manifesting is, what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well,
If you speak it into the universe, I know that sounds crazy.
it is.
What's crazier is if you're silent to yourself even. So I was making I came up with this saying where I wanted to back up my lies with the truth. And so I wanted to just make it happen. I was going to say it and say it and do it so that I would convince myself that I could do it. And
Yeah.
once I convinced myself, then it started to come back because it looked like I could MC anything. And I was emceeing chili dog contests at the lake, emceeing lingerie party. I was all kinds of things where I would show up and act like a host. And because of that, it gave me a lot of experience to overcome adversity and not be shattered or rattled if something went wrong. But I just thought these are just little steps that I need to make so I could be a good master of ceremonies, I guess was the
Yeah.
term in those days.
I I had this well, so I see you at that time and I was all into comedy, and this is I think we've talked 86, 87, somewhere in there, 85.
80 it was I started in 80 3 4 5 6 7 8 is when I got 88 is when I got that.
Okay.
Then I went to New York in 89 and Match Game in 90 91. That was kind of the progression.
And so now I'm coming from a small town, and obviously coming out of my own family, which didn't even allow television. Uh,
Right.
all of that stuff. I didn't, and I was obsessed with Letterman, and that's who I wanted to be. I wanted to be Letterman, and had no idea. This is how dumb I was. Had no idea that there were millions of other people who wanted to do the exact same thing.
Right. That's so
I,
true.
I thought I have this really unique plan for my life. I'm gonna take over for Letterman, and then and I never really talked about it, so I wondered. I didn't really talk about it because I thought I don't know if I should say this out loud, especially when I got around other comedians. And then when I finally did, they're like, "Yeah, we all have that. We all have that dream, idiot." and then find out, oh, that's I was just one of millions. And even I want to name drop, but I'm going to.
Yeah.
I opened for Seth Meyers, and I thought this will be a great moment for me to talk about because he had just gotten late night, and
Oh yeah.
I said, you know, that was my dream to always host late night. And it didn't even. He just goes, yeah, me too. And they're like, oh, okay.
So
And
Chris,
that's what I thought he was going to say. Like he's going to go, oh, did you want it? Oh, no, then you can have it if you wanted it that bad.
yeah,
I don't know what I
right.
thought. I thought there'd be a connection, but it was just like, yeah, no kidding. So did I.
Like
So did
Seth
everybody.
would say, "Oh, Chris, you'd be way better at this than I am." So I'm going
Yeah.
to make a call.
After I saw your 15 minutes, I realized I should resign and just hand it over.
Well, as after that show, after I got that show, I found out later, but not too much later, that Pat Sajak wanted that show. Alex Trebek wanted that show. Jay Leno wanted it. Jerry Seinfeld wanted it. Bill Maher wanted it. All the other comedians were just thinking Carson's going to retire or die someday, so I should line myself up for that.
Yeah.
I mean, and it was Carol Burnett wanted it. Vicki Lawrence wanted it. There were I don't know, dozens of
Everybody
people.
from Mama's Family wanted it.
Yes, yes, yes. She wanted it. There were all kinds of people who thought I'm perfect for that show.
Yeah.
So that's why I thought I now in retrospect, where I thought, of course I'm going to get it. I've got a good tape, you know. So I guess I was cocky and I'd had 5 years of experience doing a talk show. I thought I was the right person, and I was for a while. But there's a lot of competition in late night, and that was before Jimmy Kimmel, who's been there almost 20 years, maybe a little
Yeah.
more. I don't know.
More. Yeah. More now.
ABC wasn't in the late night business. They were in the Nightline business, and then I was on a show that followed Nightline at late night. So it was an experience I was really grateful to have because I think there were only 3 jobs at that time for the late night.
Right. And then, maybe four if you count. If you so
Ted
three.
Koppel?
No, I was going to say later with Bob Costas, which was
Oh
after.
yeah, yeah.
So that was sort of. But okay, before we get move on from this, you did have one iconic show where you got the Gilligan's Island people back together, right?
Right. That's right.
How did
It
that
was
come about? Tell me a little bit about that because I
okay. So what happened there?
remember this being, and I was like, I can't believe it's happening.
Okay, how we got them? Because we couldn't get other guests.
Oh,
The Tonight Show had locked up people. They'd say, "We'd love to do the show. We can't. We're committed to the Tonight Show." Oh no, we can't. We're committed to Letterman. And so we had a lot of B-level celebrities. Sometimes you'll get the A level, but they'd say, "Yeah, we'll give you an A-level celebrity if you take the third lead from Mama's Family or something like that."
yeah,
And so we had to make deals. And then we had this agent say, "Why don't you do stunt shows?" Which we didn't think of, didn't occur to us. But there were some shows like Gilligan's Island, Batman. Um, what was the show we started doing reunions of Animal House and some other things where I guess at that time they weren't that old and grown up with these shows, and they were big hits for us. So there's still huge numbers on YouTube for those shows.
yeah.
So
So
it
you
was
got
awesome.
Gilligan's Island,
Yeah,
all them together
yeah, we did
on the
all of
show,
it.
and did they fight? Like, did they get along okay, or was it
No,
all?
everybody got along except Ginger. Ginger
That's exactly what
was
they always said.
she was a stereotype.
Tina
She couldn't
Louise.
get regular acting work after that. She thinks that Gilligan ruined her career, and she's the only one still alive.
Ah, we'll see. What does that
Yeah,
say? I don't know what that
I,
says.
I think she won.
But the story, and of course, what do I know? But the story was that when she was presented with the show, she couldn't understand why it wasn't all about her. And someone might go, "It's called Gilligan's Island. Do you not understand? Your name's not in that title at all." But,
No, no. But
but
here's
I
the other
guess,
thing: that Jim Backus was a big star, and he thought the show was going to be all about him. It, so it's the same thing. Whenever it's why on oh Joel McHale show Community.
yeah,
He Chevy thought the show was going to be all about Chevy Chase,
yeah,
and it caused all kinds of friction. So I'm sure that caused a lot of friction with the people who are not known when they went into Gilligan's Island. The only one who really had any sitcom experience was Bob Denver,
right.
who's Maynard G. Krebs. and he blew up. He was fantastic. They didn't make any money on that show, of course, after the 3 or 4 seasons they did, and the rest of made their money doing autograph shows for 30 years after.
I will also mention that the skipper was regular on Andy Griffith.
Oh, I didn't remember that. I
Yeah,
think I've seen every minute. I didn't know that.
as someone who was watched every episode many many times.
Me too. Alan Hale. I did.
Yeah,
He was a sweet guy. He could
he's the guy
not
that
have been
would come
nicer.
down from the mountains and want to get a wife and all that. Anyway,
Oh yes, I remember that. I do
I
remember
can do
that.
all the episodes he was in, but
Right.
we don't have time for that.
He was a great guy.
Yeah.
They were all very nice. They were all very nice. Just the and Natalie Shafer at the time, who was Mrs. Howell, when she died, she had lied about her age by 16 years. That's
Was she
crazy.
older or younger?
No, she was 96, but she said she was. Everyone thought she was 80.
Oh, you got to do what you got to do to keep working.
I guess so. Yeah.
Well, as a 23-year-old doing a podcast, I get that. So, you got to. Some people just can't handle the real
I
age.
think you just that's why I go with your best age.
So then I'm going to jump ahead a little bit because I
Yeah.
want to tie it into the kind of focus of this podcast, which is about education and at least teaching and stuff. So you talked about the transition. You said you wanted to make more money when you were
Yeah.
touring, doing stand up, and then you started doing corporate gigs. And corporate gigs typically just mean you're doing a show for a corporation. Usually it's after dinner or some
Yeah.
sort of convention or those kinds of things. But you've taken it to a different level, which is you go in as a keynote speaker and actually present to them something that they can learn. I'm going to use the term teach, but you're doing some of that with that. How did that progress to that from doing just entertainment to teaching?
Thanks for asking that question because the first when I got out of college, excuse me, I didn't have any show business aspirations, but I had a comedy partner that we would entertain sometimes at parties. But the other thing that I did because I wanted to jumpstart my life is that when I was 20, I made a determination that I was going to be a millionaire, but I didn't know how to do that.
Did you say it out loud?
You didn't say it out
Did you
loud.
speak it to the?
And this friend of my dad said, "What do you want to do?" I said, I'm going to go into business somehow. I said, "Oh, do you have money?" No, I have no money. What do you have any talents? The only talent I had was I could buy broken things like motorcycles and boats and cars and skateboards or whatever, and I could fix them up and resell them for a profit. So I knew about how to make a profit margin from what you buy it for to what you sell it for. Yeah, you can see. He says, "Oh, you can do the same thing with a business. How do you do that? Go down to the bankruptcy court, see what's in bankruptcy, and you can get them for pennies, and it'll be okay because they're already broke. So do that." And he was right. I went down, and the first thing I bought was a decrepit stereo store on the Puyallup Indian Reservation. I'm Blackfoot Indian myself, so that was kind of an easy transition for me. And so I took over the store and fixed it up and turned it into a stereo and pet shop. Made money, sold another one, sold another. I did it 23 different times. And I had this business experience. So now then I become a comedian and a talk show host. Now I'm an out of work talk show host. And but I can still do comedy. I just don't want to do it. So I started integrating. I realized that these companies also wanted to know they'd have these other speakers who would show up and teach them things. And I thought, I wonder if I could teach them things from an entrepreneurial standpoint. So I tried it out a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time, and I had jokes that went with it, and it worked. And so I thought, all I have to do is combine my two experiences, comedy, talk show, and business. And then I wrote a little book on how to do that. And that led to now I've got 11 books. And so these companies would actually hire me to come in and give them insight they didn't see. And so the magic moment for me was, okay, I go to all these companies and I would tell Apple, here's what they're doing at Amazon, for example, or Shell Oil, here's what they're doing at Chevron. Because I'd had case studies, I had all these stories, and they're just staring at me like, oh my gosh, we didn't know that. No, because here's what happens with companies. They're so focused on their own industry, they don't think outside that box at all. They don't think that maybe they could pick up something from General Mills, or they could think up something from 24-Hour Fitness or Ripley's Believe It or Not. And so that's what I became a conduit of bringing in these other ideas they had never heard of because they don't go to those meetings.
And And was that so when you're teaching or telling the audience this,
Yeah.
just think about this as I filter it through being a teacher. How do you just say it and then expect, well, either you get it or you don't, or do you do some sort of we call this check for understanding. So
Oh,
how do you know they're getting it besides, well, that was great, and they applaud at the end? Do you
so
have
what I did, that's a good, that's, I like that. I'll have to use that phrase in my own vernacular now. The way I would, and you know what it's like to try out new material. You don't know if it's going to work or not. And so for me, I didn't know if my ideas were going to work. So I tagged them with a joke. I would write jokes around it. So at least it would be entertaining. And
oh, yeah.
I had a lot of material. So I could tag, this reminds me, see that going to 24-hour fitness is like this, or I'm trying to think of adversity. I had adversity when I was a college football player. I was voted most likely to get shaken up on the play. Stuff like that would at least give me an out, and then into some more of my comedy material, and then I'd try another little thing after that. Pretty soon, by going to all these different meetings, I had a lot of stories and a lot of case studies, and I would listen really hard about what was successful, what failed, and why. I was really interested, and that became my focus. And then I encouraged people to crash the wrong meetings, and that became a whole thing.
Crash
Yeah,
Meeting Crashers? Was that
yeah,
you?
meeting
I don't
crasher.
remember if you were in that movie. I couldn't
No,
remember.
it wasn't in that. It was in the meeting crasher movie,
Uh,
but it
um,
turned into a real career.
yeah, that's what I knew. But when we talked and I met you, that I didn't realize all of that had happened. And then I looked at your website and saw all these books. And I think about how long it's taken me to try to do one book that I've been working on forever. How do you do that, by the way? How do you push yourself? If you do you have an external deadline, or is it only internal?
I My process is different. Every writer has a different process, but I get an idea, and I have to do this little internal test. Is this just an idea that would make an article? Would it make a blog? Or is there enough for a whole book? So I think of an idea that had a large enough umbrella that I could put all these things under that umbrella to make a book. I've written 11, but I probably outlined 25 because they don't work. It
Yeah,
doesn't go anywhere, or I can't think of enough to do it. So what I do is I get that, and then I get a table of contents down, and I just try to fill in the table of contents, but I only write 10 pages a day. So if I can get 10 pages a day, and I don't edit, I just write down anything that might pop into my head or come out. And then the book happens when I've written 400 or 300 pages, let's say, and then scrunch it all back down, editing it like we do jokes.
yeah. I had a student today tell me she's never finished a book, and so
Finish reading a book?
right.
Yeah.
So slightly different than what I was saying, which is I haven't finished my one book. She's like, I've never actually finished a full book. So if you get me to do this one, that'll be amazing. So
Well, so
goals. We have goals for the semester.
we have goals, and so our brain gaslights us because it inserts doubt, where you think this is crap. This doesn't make
Yeah.
any sense. I don't know what this chapter is doing here, and it should be over there. Um, I don't think anybody will read this book. All those things will drift in, and you just have to ignore them because it's your book. Anything you write about is coming from your perspective, so it's not wrong. And especially as an educator, where you've read so much, you kind of know now when you pick up a book, am I looking to the back to see how many pages are left? And if you ever do that, it's a bad book.
Oh, I do that quite. I
Huh?
want to be proud of myself, but I do what you're saying about the gaslighting. That I feel that when I'm trying to do new material, like I really struggle. And we've had this actual conversation because you've seen me try to do new material, and it's just a battle because I think this is not working, and I know it's supposed to work, and it's once you have material that already works, it's so hard to get rid of it or discard it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Well, don't, because I'm celebrating the 41st anniversary of one of my best jokes.
okay, okay, all right. Well,
Yeah. So I'm gonna keep it because a lot of people haven't heard it. So
there's that the other part. I'm not famous, so obviously my friends will say I've heard that joke before, but I go all the time to places where they've never heard of me at all,
Yeah.
so I might as well do my best jokes. That's what at least that's what I tell myself.
Well, no, but I think that's really accurate because if you add up all the audiences you've done in your 20 years, how many people do you think that would account for? A million? Two
No,
million?
I don't think a million by the maybe, but I don't think I'm sure five, six, 700,000 maybe at the
So,
most.
so I would perform for 3 million, 3.2 million a night on that late show.
Yeah, there you go.
And then I would go out and do clubs. They never heard any of my jokes. So it was,
Again, but they would yell that, right?
yeah, yeah. What's Batman like? Those, yeah, there's some of those people that shout out. Like David Spade says, hey, tell me about Tommy Boy. You can't live it down. But I would just encourage you to just keep after it and write the hell out of it and try to. So here's the other thing that I think about writing books. People will write a book and they'll go, the title of my book, before they even type, the title of my book is going to be this. And you start writing and writing, and then you're writing to the title, which is the wrong approach, in my opinion. I think you should write, and then the book will reveal what the title should be.
Yeah. Well, that's what I started with this title.
I,
Maybe that's the problem.
everyone does. Everyone does. Because I'm going to write a book about this.
Mine,
Everyone does.
mine is called Chicken Soup for the Vegetarian Soul.
Okay.
That's
That's
what I have.
probably, I think Canfield has that already.
Oh, okay.
They have one on for the prisoner's soul. They have it for all kinds of things.
Okay.
But I get your point. It's tedious.
Mannequins
Never
for
easy.
Dummies. That's my other one.
What's that?
Mannequins for Dummies. That's what I. That's my.
If I write another book, it's going to be from obscurity and back again.
Oh yeah. See, there you go.
Yeah.
From here to. That's good. That's good. Well, then that sort of transitions to how we also have connected a little bit is you started in stand up, and then all this other journey, all these other things, and we've talked about you doing stand up again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always curious to me why once someone has some success, why you'd want to come back to stand up if that's something you want. So tell me what was the process of thinking that?
Watching you.
You got you know what? If he can still do this, there's no way I can't not do
Oh, listen to that. I was telling my fiance, listen to that. You're funnier than that. So, no,
this. This chair is funnier than this guy up here.
I think what it is, man, it's going to sound, I don't want to say it. I'm not going to phrase it like I was going to phrase it, but I will say this. I had so much fun discovering stand-up and creating something from thin air and then having strangers laugh at it.
Yeah.
And I do that now professionally, but it's not the same. It's not the same as making a lot of people laugh. I can make a niche laugh a lot and it pays well and I get good accommodations when I travel, all that stuff. But the part of it, I go back to being a little kid making wisecracks to my friends when you weren't being paid and there wasn't any reward in it, but it was just super fun. And so now I get excited thinking of premises I haven't heard comedians do and going down that rabbit hole. With the experience that I have after doing this for 4 decades, I can write faster and I can throw out faster. I think that's what I do. And it's just, will it amount to anything? Probably not. I have in my head that if I could have another act, another stand-up act, at least I could get on stage and entertain for an hour or whatever. That's something, as you know, very few people can pull off. A lot of people have it in their head. Or I meet people all the time. Oh, really? I'm a stand-up comedian. Where do you work? I don't really, but I go on open night mic or new material night.
Right.
That's not stand-up to me. That's a hobby. I want to make it something that would sell.
Are there some guys that you started out with way back that are still doing stand-up that you're close with?
Yeah. Jay Leno, probably my most famous friend. Jerry Seinfeld, both of those guys are really good. Jake Johansson, who you know really well, I think is exceptional.
Love him.
And he's still doing it. Bobby Slayton, who I think he's retired maybe a couple of times. Um,
Some of those
but there are people.
come back. I've heard about
What?
this. I've heard about those guys who retire and come back.
They all come back. Ron White, who you know really well,
Oh,
was flat out retired, but now he's got dates again. I think it's once it's in you, it's not like you just kind of have to do it
yeah,
because it's just because you know how rare it is. And if you think you've figured it out over these years, or at least what you figure out is if a joke bombs, I'm not doing that again, or I'll try it in a different form. But it's a gosh, it's just like a math problem that's really fun to solve. You and I have talked about that.
yeah,
You love being a person who can fix jokes.
yeah. I love the puzzle.
It's the puzzle. Yeah, you like the puzzle. And the frustration of trying out new material. How many times will you try a joke or routine before you dump it?
I've got a couple I've tried probably 20 times, and I'm still trying to figure out. I know it's there, it's just not working. So yeah, and then some of I put away for years and come back to it and then fixed it. Like it just like oh, that's all I had to do is just that. Oh, I come to a new spot, uh,
Oh, okay.
which is what I actually read. I've heard authors talk about that. That once they write and write, and then if they get stuck at a spot, they just put it away, and then they come back to it later. And if it fixes itself, fine. If not, it's just never going to happen. That kind of a thing. Uh,
Have you ever fixed a joke in your dream and then you wake up and go, of course, that's what it is. So, like our minds and our
a little
subconscious
bit.
are always kind of working.
This is the one I had the other night that I woke up. Sometimes you have this where you say, "I had this idea while you're dreaming." Well, this is a brilliant joke, and you get up and you write it down. And in the morning, it doesn't sound quite right. I had one the other night. This is absolutely true. I thought the thought was, and I read it the next morning, which I go, if owls are so smart, and they're supposed to be like super smart, why do they wear graduation hats? Because that's got to slow them down, like aerodynamically.
Right. That's good.
That is what I
Okay.
wrote down at 2 in the morning, and then woke up the next morning and go, "This is so stupid. Why would I have?" But in my dream, I was sure this is such a brilliant take on owls that no one else has.
All right. This is the kind of thing that I like too. That if you set up the premise, you know, when they you
Yeah,
if the audience buys the premise, they'll buy the bit. Is that uh, owls because they wear that hat, and they have no other they have no other evidence of being smart.
yeah,
And it's so what bothers me about the hat are the aerodynamics. That hat. You can't. How are you going to fly? There's I don't know. There's all kinds of ways to go with that if they buy into it,
yeah.
or they're not buying into it because owls don't really wear graduation hats. I don't know.
I'm not even sure how it got started that owls are smart because I'm not even sure where like monkeys and some other animal and some birds you go, oh, I see they do some clever things,
Hmm.
but I
Hmm.
don't know what owls have done to get this reputation of being very smart. This joke is going to just rocket me to stardom with this once I figure this thing out.
Yeah, the owl bit.
Yeah, the owl.
People
I'll
talk
put that
about
with
the
my
owl.
lumberjack material that always. That's the one I have literally worked on for 20 years,
Wow, wow.
and it still doesn't really work. It's just kind of like some audiences will go with it, but it's not one of those consistently like I haven't figured it out, and it's okay. I know that I will. It'll. What I found was some of the jokes that kind of were in that vein of, especially observational stuff, which I don't do very well. Why is that? Uh, I was able to put those in my movie, so in a way that was like less set up punchline. They could just be part of conversation, and they were easier to put into that idea.
Well, I when I said that earlier in this conversation about that your brain gaslights you, I'm working on a brain bit that now has flowed over to a body bit that uh, I think I think there's a lot there. I've written a lot on it, and I just need to sort it out uh, because there's a lot that goes wrong. The premise of the bit. If I tell you and a lot of comedians watch this, they'll think, "Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
think I can."
it's a pretty popular podcast. We've just got.
It's a very popular podcast.
I just saw the analytics. It looked like we got 6 listens on
Oh,
Saturday.
that's awesome.
So that's four short of double digits. So we're pretty close to. making that big jump. That's what I feel like.
It's retention, man. You can get them back.
Yeah, that's it. It says active listeners. And I go, a couple of my friends are not that great a shape. I'm not sure that that's probably not them. It's hard to say. Uh, yeah. So anyway, we'll see. I'm hoping that you get out and do some more, just
I have 2
straight
dates
stand
booked.
up or that kind of thing, because it's for me one of the things I love it for sure. That's number one. I love it. And people ask me, when are you going to quit teaching, or what are you going to do, teaching or stand up? And I always say, well, I'm going to do both until I have to quit one of them. But I love stand up and I don't want to quit doing them because, one, once you stop, it's hard to get back into it in terms of being booked. But that term, I don't want to lose my fastball. I want to stay sharp as long as I can stay sharp. And I'm not implying that I'm super sharp, but I'm just saying I'm still polished and do it every week. So I know I can do it anytime. Someone can call me now and say, will you go up and do an hour? Right now I could do that. And I know
Yes.
there are not a lot of people who could. So, it's something I do. I just love it.
I think it's really important for longevity. Comedians die old because they don't quit. It keeps you energized. They don't do it for the successful ones. Keep doing it. It's not for the money. It's just for the laugh and to see it, the challenge. And you know this that when you said an hour, but if we get one brand new joke that we slip into the act, we cannot wait to
Yeah.
get to it. 30 minutes in, 35 minutes in, because
That
you
happened.
know it's going to
That happened
slide.
this weekend. I had one that I've been working on, and it worked so well in a theater, and it was just such an amazing moment. And I had trouble sleeping, and I was so excited about this one joke. And I'm sure the audience was like, yeah, it's pretty good. But in my head, I'm like, can you believe it? That thing worked, and I have been working on it, and it worked, and I was just so happy about that.
Because you know how many you had to write to get to that one,
Yeah,
and that it shows you still have it. That you, I have this joke that I didn't. It was for a corporate job, and corporate comedians hate him. I don't, but a lot of comedians don't like him. And it was supposed to be somewhat motivational, and I blast motivational speakers. And the joke was, um, I don't like Tony Robbins, Anthony Robbins guy, because he's just so optimistic, and it bothers me that he hasn't done anything except talk with optimism. He's so optimistic. If he went to jail, I'll bet he would tell people he lived in a gated community. And it got an explosive laugh the very first time.
mm.
And the first time was probably 9 years ago.
Oh wow,
I did it a week ago. And when I got to this, and it always works, because you know this too, there's some kind of an evolution of how they go for a long time and then quit. And I did it for this crowd. There were about 500 people in the crowd. And when I said that, the crowd went, oh, like, now you like Tony Robbins? Now there's been a shift where now he's a hero in some way. Don't dare try to unseat our God here. I was unbelievable to me. But you know, they come and go.
well, some of it, there is a sensitivity to audiences sometimes. We used to be able to say a lot of things that were really, really horrible about people, and I'm not talking about like ethnicities or anything like that. I'm talking about just saying things about people and whoever it was, or even your family members. You could say awful things, and now there's a segment, and it's wonderful. It's a wonderful human trait. It's just bad for comedy for people to feel bad for the people in the jokes, and a lot of time that might not even be, it may be partially true, could be true, who knows, but there is some the sort of, oh, that is a weird thing when people, you don't even know this person and you feel bad for them. But
Well, have you? Yeah, I know. But why? Why is there? Well, it's just. I guess it's just the culture feeling bad.
yeah,
Because it wasn't against men. It wasn't against race or
right,
creed or religion. Nothing. Nothing. It was just about a 6'7" blowhard, and you can't even do that
Lindsay, I'm
now.
right here. Oh, yeah,
So
I tell jokes like, uh, so we have you ever thought about teaching? I know, so just to pull you into my world a little bit, did that ever cross your
yes,
mind when you were
yeah.
thinking about doing stuff other than stand up?
For 3 years, I was an adjunct professor at the University of Washington
Oh,
in Seattle.
go Huskies.
Yeah, go Huskies. So I would teach 2 times a week,
Uh-huh.
And at that time, it was for a period of time where I wasn't traveling and I was doing the television show and the radio show, so I could slip over and do it. And it was on presentation skills. It was speaking in public, fear of public speaking, stuff like that. And I had all kinds of, there were students, but there were also people from the community.
Yeah.
And I really loved it. I really loved, what was the phrase you used earlier? Are you getting through to them? Or you had another phrase?
Well, check for understanding was the
Oh, check for understanding.
yeah.
It was very participatory.
I'm
And I
so
was,
glad that so there's teachers out there going, well, he's using his catchphrases. This is really great.
yeah, I am. Because I think I didn't think of myself as a teacher. Now I kind of do because I've done it for so many years.
Yeah.
But at the time, I wanted them to improve. And so I knew all their names and I coached them and say, okay, you just have to get up and talk for 30 seconds. I
Right.
want you to memorize the first six things you're going to say. Start there. We went around the room and it became kind of a champion moment for everybody when the rest of the students were critiquing or applauding people who were previously nervous. So it was celebratory, it was teaching, it was participation,
Yeah.
and I would always end earlier than they thought we were going to end.
Another way to be very popular. Yeah, that's a my one of my professors who told me when I started teaching college classes, because I don't know how it worked then, but the way it is now, you get a professor review at the end of the semester. There's not usually someone that comes in and watches you from administration. They're going strictly by your review from students.
Oh,
And
they stepped into my class.
and so, I mean, that can happen, but that's not usually how you're reviewed. You're reviewed by students. And he just said, if you give the students A's, you're a great professor. And that's your reviews will show that. So,
Oh, no.
but some of those things, bringing food and leaving a little early or those kinds of things, letting them bring their dogs, all of those things will help. But I would just say you kind of touched on what is the magic of teaching, which is I was so consumed about being funny and trying to be on stage.
Right.
Then I started teaching, and all of a sudden now I'm thinking about not myself, which I care about the most, but a group of people I didn't know a month or two before, but I cared deeply about whether or not they got something from what we were doing. And that is just such a special thing. And it's the most basic of human things to say, if you make someone else's life better, your life will be enriched. And that's what it is all day, every day. And it's sometimes hard to see that because you hear of all the horrible things about teaching, but there's a magic there that it's hard to replace. And I can't get the feeling of getting a laugh on stage anywhere else, and I can't get that feeling what I get in teaching, which is that I'm helping, and not that I'm changing their life. I don't think of it in those terms. That I'm just part of their journey, and I get to be a cheerleader for them to go. You're going to be great, and I'm going to help you get to wherever that is. And let's hope it's something positive.
Well, but you have taught long enough now where you do have people come up to you and say, "Oh, Mr. Voth, you did this for me," and
Yeah,
I'll
and
never
I
forget
and I
this.
correct them and go, it's Dr. Voth. So I don't know
Oh, Dr. Voth, yeah,
who you think you're
that's
talking to.
good. That's good.
I'll take
Try
the
to
compliment, but let's start with a no.
shatter their dreams and fears right away.
Yeah,
So what I was because correct me if I'm wrong about this, because I think high school or junior high school is probably different than when I was teaching at the University of Washington, for example,
yeah,
because my class was an elective and they chose to come. So maybe they felt they were going to get something they couldn't get elsewhere. I don't know. If it wasn't mandatory.
yeah. So I've taught from elementary school to grad school. So I've taught pretty much every level that
Okay.
there is. What I would say about teaching college classes was it was great because they're really like adults and having those conversations, but I
Hmm.
wasn't entrenched in their lives that much. Now, middle school I won't touch because that was a horrible experience for me teaching, but
Uh,
high school is to me the greatest for me. Now it's everybody has their own level, but the big thing is these are really, really impactful years. And it's not just that they came to your class. They also have a play they're in. They're also on the football team,
oh,
all those things. And you go to those events and you see them making memories right then, and you're part of that, in the background, but you're part of that thing that they're going to talk about for the rest of their life when they say, in high
right.
school, I did this. And I remember in high school I did this, like that. It's just so imprinted in their brain. So you're a part of their life. And I felt like with college classes, I was a part of their college life, but I wasn't part of their life. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, I see
I
what you're saying.
was
Yeah. That's
I was giving them information that was going to help them with what they were doing, but and it was great. It wasn't bad. It was just I didn't. It wasn't that as personal as high school feels to me. But that's how I experience it.
well, I know how passionate you are about students and teaching. What about those teachers who may be watching your podcast? Are there some who just think, man, I don't have that passion for it. I'm doing this because I have summers off, or I,
I
I
mean,
was,
I think it's way too hard of a job to do it just for summers, but it's
oh,
possible.
that's good.
Um, you know, it's just like if you watch those guys that do the Alaskan fishing or something, and you say, "They, do
Yeah.
you see how much money they make?" Go, yeah, but you can, that's a lot to go through to get whatever extra money you think they're making. That's how
So,
I see it. But there are one, you know, it's a tough job. It's a really hard job, and it's gotten exponentially harder since COVID to be able
oh,
to
yeah,
handle classroom. But I do think human beings are the same as they've pretty much always been. They want to enjoy life. They want to feel cared about. They want to be with their friends. They want to be loved by their families. You know, they want to all of those things that high school kids want to have. They want to know that they're okay. They want to know they want to have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, not because, but they just want to know that they're like a normal person and they feel good about them. All those things, those are things that you could have said 300 years ago, 100 years ago. Same thing. They want that feeling. So that's why I say. I mean, it's harder with phones and all of that. It's just everything's harder, but the core of it is the same, I believe. So just like stand up has changed a lot, but at the core of it, you got to be funny on stage, and you will know 6 or 7 seconds later whether or not they thought you were funny,
right.
whether or not
So
there's technology involved or not.
I have a question about teaching and how the architecture of teaching has changed from this angle. When I go out and speak to corporations, for example, I bring a multimedia presentation. So I'm up there doing something. I have clips that I show. I have funny phrases or quotes or pictures. I do audience participation stuff because I feel like if you're presenting to anybody, it should be a show because you're being compared to streaming channels and live music and live. So why would that not apply to teaching? Why would, if because they're TikToked to death, they do everything with reels and shorts, that do they expect from the teacher to be, you better keep me entertained, or you better keep my attention because this is what I'm going to do if you don't.
I think it's not that, it is the other, which is to say they need to not be passive participants in what you're doing. If
Oh,
that's the case, then you are failing no matter what. There's no amount of things I could put on a screen that's going to be more interesting than what's on their screen in their hand. That's just
right.
not going to happen.
Right.
But so I try to have, and this is just the way my approach is. When I talk to all of them, my presentation to them is very short, and the rest of it is work time of them doing something. So now they could choose not to do that, of course, but it's either they're reading or they're writing or they're talking with each other about something. They're doing something other than passively looking at what I'm presenting because, like I said, whoever there's people who are skilled at coming up with something that they're going to like better than what anything I put on my screen.
Sure.
So I'm
Sure.
not trying to entertain them. I'm not trying to compete with that. I'm trying to get them to do something. So my, an hour class, I'm going to talk for in front of everybody, less than 10 minutes for sure, and
Oh, wow.
may present a couple things and then say, here's what I'm asking you to do for the rest of this time. I want you to work on this and this, and I'm going to come around and talk with you and see how you're doing with that. And at the end of the class, this is what I would like to have you accomplish. So that's how I go, and then I walk around and chat with them and talk with them, and we get to joke and sort of that sort of thing. And I what we call redirection. You go, okay, you guys are a little too far into that conversation. Let's move it back to like what I want you to do, which is read these chapters and compare it to your life and that sort of stuff. So it's which is hard to do in a presentation in a group, but this is what happens. This is why my doctoral emphasis was on teaching teachers and those professional development things. I go to so many and teachers will attest to this. They go to so many presentations where the teachers are being taught in a way that you would never be able to teach. So I went to something this summer. I sat there for 3 hours while they went through and clicked through slides. I think my students would have revolted. They would have been, they'd have been out the door in 5 minutes ago. I gotta go to the bathroom, and they would have never come back if they talked to it. But some people just forget. Teachers see all the same thing. You got to, this has to be interactive. Give me something to do. Why am I here? How am I going to get better? Give me something other than telling me something. That's just, it doesn't. I don't think that works anymore.
I don't think the lectures ever worked.
Well, yeah.
That,
Well, then maybe that's true too.
but because everybody's seeing this, teachers are seeing this, and they're hearing case studies of success stories from other teachers, I'm sure, and you talk amongst yourselves. Is it human nature that makes some teachers just know this is the way I know it, this is the way I'm going to teach it? Let the
Yeah, I
you know,
think, well, there's the thing that you always have to fight as a teacher, which is say the way you learn may not be the way someone else learned.
yeah,
So if that's the way you consumed information at some point, we all have these incredible romantic ideas in our head about something we did in high school and it was so great, and you can't wait to have your students do it, and it just bombs badly
oh,
because they
oh,
just like, it was the time or whatever it was, it just didn't work. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they turn into a mess of going, okay, that was, I guess, something I loved and just not what my students respond to. But I think part of what happens in this, and you can speak to this as much about public speaking, to say some people fall in love with hearing themselves speak and they think, well, I've been hired to do this, so I must have all the answers. And I come to class every day not having answers, saying, I have questions. Let's figure out the answers together as we go. And so students will go, well, is the right answer this? I go, maybe, because maybe. I don't know. I would like it to be a conversation. If you have a better idea about why this character did this, I love it. That's you've thought through it. And that's, obviously, if you say, is this the right definition, that's a little more, black and white. But
yeah,
in general, what I'm hoping is happening is there's a conversation happening of real human interaction. So I think when those lectures happen, it's because the person knows how much they're getting paid, knows how much they believe then that they are the only one that has answer. I don't know if that's the case. I won't say their motivation for that, but they think I'm giving such amazing information, these people will want it that way. And if they're entertaining, it's one thing, but if it's just information, the people that read off the slides go, I have this, I can see that. And then
yeah. I can read it myself.
the killer is when they say, and I sent a copy of the slides to you on email. I go, well, then what am I doing here? I could go home and read this myself. I could read this on a golf course in between holes and be a lot happier. So,
Hmm.
but that's
Well,
me.
I think what you do is what should be done, and I'll use television talk shows as a model. I was really lucky enough to get to know Johnny Carson, who nobody knows who he is anymore, but he was one of the premier uh, talk show hosts for the Tonight Show. And I asked him once, "How did you stay on the air for 30 years?" And he said, "I never try to be the best guest on my own show."
Yeah,
Because he really was trying to draw it out of other people. He was asking questions. He could bail them out if they were in trouble, but he just was a very curious guy about drums and astronomy and books and people. And it's kind of a throwback to what it used to be like having a conversation with someone. And when you engage somebody in that way, like you do, is it maybe, what's your opinion about that? You're proving to them that you care about them, you want to listen to them, and you're not pontificating because you're a doctor.
yeah,
So I'm with you on how that would make a pretty successful teaching model. I would think it's what I do in breakout sessions where I have people and we're picked a subject and they're supposed to around round tables come up with, but it's never longer than 3 or 4 minutes. And then somebody stands up to talk about it. And it's my job to ask questions to draw out more information for the next table. And keep, so I guess goes to social media. Social media that's successful is the one that engages the other people at the other end of the net.
yeah. Well, and that's why you were so good at being a talk show host. Not just because I don't know if you can hear my cat now come in. She's not.
No, I can't. I can't hear Louise.
She,
I mean,
my real boss is here. But you were so good at doing the talk show because you relaxed all that, but you also asked questions and you had guests, and some of them we didn't know because as we found out later they were B and C level guests because we didn't know who they. If they're on TV, they must be important. But you were always great about that, and that's what I said when the first night I met you. I said I thought you were so good at being relaxed and calm, and whatever's going on, it was really really fantastic, and it made enough of an impression on me that 30 some years later when I saw you at a show, oh, I know exactly who that is, and I know a lot about him in the kind of creepy way, but also in a fun way.
yeah, I've regretted it so many times, but I've never had the courage to say anything.
Yeah, but once I got your number and all that, it became
Yeah, I know.
well. We've done a little over an hour, and I don't want to keep you more than that, and I don't want this to be one of those 3 hour tour type uh, podcasts where people say,
Oh, good callback.
"Yeah, see what I did there? I just brought it back." And
No, you did.
just try to subtly slide that
Yeah,
in there.
I like it.
But thank you so much for talking with me, Ross. It's
Sure.
always a pleasure. We talk a lot anyway, and I
Yeah.
know we could talk more, and maybe we'll have you back to go through how to build that sort of uh, presentation that you do, or at least help me complete a book since you have 11 of them.
Well, I really would encourage you to start thinking about not only working on your current book, but what will your next two books be? So that you put that in your head that what I'm going to do is not my last book. That's a big mistake with writers, in my
Oh
opinion,
man,
is that they ruminate and ruminate and they want to get that first book perfect and oh, it's not quite ready. I don't want to publish it now because I haven't done this and I haven't done this. I say go ahead and publish it. Get it out. Otherwise, you'll be in it 10 years. And I've seen that. I've seen that with a lot of my friends who have said, oh, I'm still working on that book. Didn't you do that in 2003 or something?
that is me. That is me. So the
Well,
second book will be. Can you believe I wrote a book? And I'll do it all
yeah,
about
do
that.
that.
And the third one will
Do
be.
that.
I did two of
It's
them, guys.
it's so gratifying to finally see it in your hands. And you will critique it to death. You'll say, oh, this is terrible. I should have done this. I should have done that. Then write another book.
Yeah.
But it's still, think of it. You're a very thoughtful person. You think things through, and it's coming through your own channel brain. Get it out there, and people say, "But hasn't somebody ever written a book about that?" Maybe. Have you read them all about the same topic? I don't know. Go on Amazon and see how many people have the same title. There are a lot because you can't copyright a title, but there's some that are much better than others. But you got to do it. It's
All right, I'm gonna have you
well,
back on when I'm done with it, and
yeah.
let's say
I
that,
love that. I love that.
and it's not going to be years; it's going to be months. I'm going to say,
Then I'll bring on my bad books. And say, I'll be happy to say, well, these three stunk and didn't sell.
and and then I'll bring in all of my notebooks of jokes that don't work, which will fill this entire room behind. Anyway,
I might actually have more notebooks of that than you.
all right, Ross,
All
thank
right.
you so much, Ross Shafer.
Thanks, Chris.
You're a great friend, great comedian, and
You too, man.
your work out there. And this is fun because it's a good tie in between education and comedy. So,
Yeah, I think they're more similar than most people think.
all right, thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris.
Hit it. Okay. Almost live and late show are two things Ross Shafer did. He bombs really well and still has two kids. Played football in college. I wonder what position. And did it help with his comedy transition? He opened for Three Dog Night and Steppenwolf. Their fans didn't care. But if you were hungry and needed clothes, they'd throw you food and underwear. You can blame him for getting the cast of Gilligan's Isle back together. Ginger wanted to be the star. I sure wish they'd let her. Be outrageous if you can, edit everything you say. Students are like cats, they'll end up eating you one day. Tell the universe what you desire, how you want your life to go. You'll discover everyone wants to have their own talk show. Books are umbrellas, no, I don't think that's right. I blame it on my brain, which I learned loves to gaslight. Stand up is like a puzzle, that was pretty deep. And now jokes are only funny when they happen in your sleep. Check for understanding is a phrase we won't forget. Also, comedians die old because they just won't quit. This song has no chorus and now it has to end. Oh, and Jay Leno is Ross Shafer's most famous friend. Ta-da!